Good storytelling isn't just about what you show, it's also about what you choose to leave out. And in the season 1 finale of Pluribus, I think the most important scene in the whole episode is something we never see. The conversation, or should I say interrogation, between Manousos and Zosia. We only get to see the build-up and the aftermath. So if the heart of the finale happens off-screen, how are we supposed to interpret its significance? Well, the answer is that we're meant to read the room instead, literally, starting with the posters hanging on the walls. When Manousos steps into Carol's neighbour's house, I see it as him crossing into the Hive's world. Because after resisting them for so long, he's finally walking into a space that they ultimately control. They're the ones keeping everything going now. The power, the water, having food there. It all exists because the Hive is maintaining its existence. And Manousos feels how wrong this is. He pushes back with the whole, "This is not your house, it's not my house, I can't stay here." Because it's not only moving into someone else's life that's been taken over, but it also represents accepting being on the Hive's turf now. And in my last video for episode 8, I spoke about how the Hive's manipulating reality for the immunes, just placating them until they can cure them, and how everything is just like a giant play. It's all a staged performance, a theatre show. And this house is just another set in the overarching production. And we see this with the choice of posters. There's a Thurston the Great Magician poster right behind Manousos and out of focus. Howard Thurston was a huge American stage magician in the early 1900s, touring with big illusion shows billed as Thurston the Great Magician, the wonder show of the universe. And the specific poster that the show's creators chose to use is one that includes Thurston holding a skull with a line that says, "Do the spirits come back?" And there's vapor and spirits swirling all around. So it's all about turning the unseen into being seen as a theatrical stunt. And I think the depth of field of this shot where the poster's shown is supposed to show how our focus is on Manousos, because he's literally in focus, right? But the magician's wonder show poster is blurred in the background. And that's how I read this whole dynamic between the Hive and Manousos. How the Hive are Thurston the magician. They're the ones staging this whole reality like a magic show where they design the sets, but they control the information by deciding what people see and what stays hidden. So by keeping the poster out of focus behind Manousos, it seems to be suggesting that, yes, by him entering this house, he's now inside their stage, but his attention isn't captured by the act. He literally doesn't even look towards the poster. So it really is showing is not being fooled or taken in by their performative show. And there's another poster that's significant too. The one that's positioned in the middle of Manousos and Zosia during their conversation, which is of Alexander the Crystal Seer. Alexander was the stage name of Claude Alexander Conlin, an American magician and mentalist who was active throughout the early 20th century. He sold himself as a psychic mind reader and was one of the highest paid mystics of his day. And the poster of his that was used in the show is one that was designed to feel exotic and mysterious, being all about secrets and mind reading and hidden knowledge, with the big words on it saying knows, sees, tells all. So it's like knows all, sees all, tells all. And he's gazing into a crystal ball held by a skeleton hand, full of little scenes of people's lives. So it's saying, I can see your whole life. I can see throughout time, and how I can see what you can't see. Now look at how they choose to place this poster in this scene. When we see Manousos and Zosia sitting on the sofa, the poster is right between them. Having the poster sit in the middle of them makes it feel like a visual line marking the battle over who knows what. On one side, there's Zosia, who of course knows everything. And on the other side, there's Manousos, who is pushing and interrogating them. As Zosia later says, he asked them very specific questions, detailed questions. He was very thorough and insistent. So having the poster between them, it's basically saying, this scene is all about who actually knows what and who can see through the performance, to see the answers. And in the same scene, we get another shot of Manousos, where the Alexander poster is right over his shoulder. And even though it's blurry, we know that the poster has Alexander's eyes just glaring right at you. And that's exactly what Manousos does to Carol, of this direct glare of, I am the man who knows, literally. So we get this little perception game between Manousos and Zosia over who actually knows what and who's seeing through whose performance. But then the show does something really interesting with their choice of camera angles. When Carol drags Zosia out of the house, we get this angle that should be from Manousos' perspective of seeing them leave. But something feels off with it. Like it feels as though the camera should be angled more to the right, like we're seeing over Manousos' shoulder from his perspective. But instead, we're in the corner, facing almost straight on. And this point of view is where the Alexander Crystal Seer poster is on the wall. So it's like we're now seeing the scene through the eyes of the poster, where we, the audience, are now Alexander the Seer. So we're actually playing this meta-perception game, where the show has literally put us into the perception game, since we never get to see the interrogation happen, and we're left to read the room, the posters, to see things from this psychic fortune teller perspective. The creators are literally deciding what we're allowed to see and basically saying the absence is meaningful. You should be noticing the things that aren't shown to you to therefore read this scene the way a fortune teller seer would. But after this whole meta-perception game, the meaning of the posters actually seems to shift once Manousos finishes his questioning and now has all of this knowledge. Like I already mentioned, initially, I think the posters represented Thurston the magician being the Hive of being the illusion builders, and Manousos being like Alexander the Seer of being the illusion breaker, and their conversation being about who controls reality. And once Manousos now has all of this additional information, he's not the seer anymore. He instead becomes Thurston the magician, being able to step into the role the Hive initially had, because he now has all of this knowledge. And we see these parallels when he purposely causes the Hive to have seizures and begins trying to pull Rick back out of the Hive mind psychic glue stuff. He's trying to talk to someone who he believes still exists underneath all of this collective consciousness. So he is embodying the Thurston poster of, do the spirits come back? He is being the medium magician of trying to reach into the unseen to bring people back. So it's almost as if he's performing a séance. And of course, he's only able to step into this role because he now has the knowledge to do so. He's gone from seeing through the illusions to knowing the tricks well enough to start performing his own show. But that's not all the divination seer imagery we get either. Because later on in the episode, when we see Carol and Zosia having a nice bath together, they're drinking tea and the camera lingers on Carol's teacup and is used as a transition scene to go into the ski lift and the mountain lodge. And for me, this teacup feels almost like a little crystal ball, like the one on Alexander's poster. So it's like we're stepping into a crystal ball, we're stepping into the future that is shown to you, and that future that we land in is the ski lodge, which is the scene where Carol's whole reality with Zosia cracks open. since that's where she finds out that they've been using her frozen eggs to turn her. So it's like we travel through this divination seer object of the teacup, of it being like reading tea leaves, it being a crystal ball, so that we can see straight into the future beyond the illusions they've been selling her to cut through to the real reality of what's going on. And of course, in that scene, that's where Carol is finally asking specifically pointed questions, which allows her to find out about them using her eggs. So all of this is really circling the same idea of getting answers isn't important. It's actually making sure you ask the right questions. And that's where Carol's book choice comes in. The book we see Carol reading later on in the episode is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, a 1969 sci-fi novel set on the planet Gethen. It's famous for its exploration of gender and otherness, which are of course very relatable to what's happening in Pluribus with the actual others. But it also spends a lot of time exploring truth, prophecy, and how we ask questions. In the book, there are a group who can, in theory, answer any question about the future, and they're called foretellers. And the story uses them to show that most people ask terrible questions. The main character, Genly, asks something like, will Gethen join the Ecumen in 5 years? And gets a clear yes. But that yes doesn't tell him how to live, who to trust, what to do tomorrow, or how to handle the present. So the whole point that it's making is a correct answer can be useless if the question is badly shaped, and how learning which questions matter is more important than seeking answers for the sake of it. And this reminds me of in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the supercomputer spends 7.5 million years calculating the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And the answer it ends up giving is 42. And everyone's like, what? What does that even mean? And the computer, Deep Thought, literally says how that is the answer. But the problem is, you've never known what the question is. You'll know what the answer means once you know what the question actually is. And all of this is why I think the most significant part of the finale is the scene we didn't even get to see, of Manousos asking the right questions. Because we've been following Carol's perspective, and even though she's found out a lot of things about the others, she hasn't been going about her investigation in the best way. The answers she has, I don't think, are as significant or important as whatever Manousos now knows. We see it with the whole dead bodies turned into milk side quest. How she goes full on Mission Impossible, sneaking around, finding out what they've been drinking, doing her little Walter White science tests, just to storm into Kumba's Las Vegas apartment, being like, look what I found out. And he says, yeah, we already know because we spoke to them. We asked them. So it's almost showing just how complicated Carol has been making this for herself. How instead of chasing down these secret, dramatic answers, she should be focused on asking direct, specific questions. Which is, of course, what we see Manousos finally do, even though we don't actually see it, but you know what I mean by now. And after the Hive leave, Carol says to him, how they're leaving again, I tried to tell you. But Manousos' perspective is, so what? It was worth it completely. Now I know much more. Now the work begins. So the key difference in how Carol has been navigating this new world with the others, and how Manousos, Kumba, and maybe the other immunes are handling the situation, is that they're actually asking the right questions. So you see how it all connects with the posters? The magician versus the seer, the sci-fi book with the foretellers and the importance of asking good questions. All of it together, I think, is the finale saying to us that the answers don't mean anything if you're asking the wrong questions, and how questions shape perception, which shape reality, which means whoever is in control of the questions are able to control the world. This is actually what the Hive's been doing this whole time, of controlling the narrative, the information, and what kind of questions are allowed, ever since day one of the joining. From the start, the Hive control the narrative of events. They rename reality, calling the event that turned everyone into the joining, and labeling Carol and the other immunes as different. We will find out what makes you different so we can fix it. They are a problem needing to be fixed. So straight away, their language choices already position themselves as the ones who are good and in the right, and how Carol is the one who's wrong and needs to be fixed. And as I've already said, if you control the narrative, you control reality. Once you're the one naming, defining what things are and what they mean, you are ultimately in control of everything. And do you know what that reminds me of? Cults. This episode finally made me realize that we are dealing with an actual cult. If we look at how cults are defined, the type of tactics authoritarian groups use in order to keep people obedient are through controlling areas like information, what you're allowed to know, what you're allowed to trust, of people's thoughts and narratives, how you're allowed to interpret things, and how the group story is always right. Through emotions and relationships, with love bombing and rewards, or through withdrawal and punishment, with identity and language of who you are, what labels you get, and how you talk about yourself, and through questioning what questions are allowed and which ones are going to get you punished for asking. The hive mind, the others, meet all of this cult criteria, and they get to justify all of this with, we're doing this because we love you. That's exactly how you build a closed system of logic, where any objection becomes either proof that you're the problem or proof that you don't understand what real love is. And all of this is why I am now so on Manousos' side of things. The line when he says they've stolen everyone's souls, that is so true. It really is like some spiritual, religious cult organization. But the scale is so hard to even conceptualize, since it is the entirety of humanity all just speaking as one entity. And I am so glad he called them weirdos, because that is what they are. Their whole way of being, their logic, their beliefs. There's so many contradictions and ways in which their decisions just make things worse. Like, I'm still so caught up on them releasing all of the animals from the zoos, trying to insist that they're so loving and caring, but they don't care about abandoning all of these animals that need and rely on human care. Let alone, obviously, the fact that they don't respect Carol and maybe even the other immunes' wishes that they do not consent to joining the hive mind. And we get to see how deeply unethical, immoral, and manipulative they are from the opening scene of this episode. The Kusimayu sequence is really what made me realize that they are a cult deploying all of these cult tactics. This is a young girl who's a part of a secluded community, with her individual self being offered up to slaughter. Because once she joins them, Kusimayu, the person, is gone. And when we first met her in episode 2, and she says to Carol, "Don't you think it sounds wonderful? I want to join them." We're already being told how the hive have been using her family's bodies as mouthpieces, as masks, to convince her that they are so happy, but they're not them anymore. So then they aren't happy. And if you're a part of this type of culture community where everyone is so close-knit and rely on each other so much, and you're in the middle of nowhere, the amount of peer pressure to conform is crazy. So for Kusimayu, it's no wonder why she was convinced by them, because she either joins them and gets her family, her community, her culture back, in quotation marks, right? Because we know she doesn't really, or she has nothing. Because all of her identity, her life, is her family, her community, her culture. And the way that the Hive purposely use these parts of her identity by weaponizing it to get her to feel comfortable joining them, it's so disturbing. Like this kind of ritual rite of passage that they perform for her, because that is what's happening. It's just a performance. It's all fake for the Hive. It clearly was something meaningful when everyone existed as individuals. Like the song chant that they all sing and take part in. Things like that symbolize so much. It's generations of memory of your ancestors being passed down. They're full of stories and sincere, genuine beliefs. Those are all the things that gives it meaning. But to the Hive, all of those things, the stories, the link to your ancestors, your culture, none of it seems to matter to them. They're just doing it to make her feel comfortable. And that's why it's so disturbing, because it lacks the sincerity and the genuineness of what gives the ceremony, this rite of passage, meaning. So this entire opening scene was just so troubling and made me see the Hive for kind of who they really are in a more sinister, deceptive, horrible way. Because of their erasure of humanity, because it erases the meanings us as human beings give to things, and their manipulation doesn't even stop there. Towards the end of the episode, Zosia tells Carol how Kusimayu is now a part of them, how she's joined us, and she'll tell you how wonderful it is. She's the happiest she's ever been. No, she won't, because she's gone. It's like what Carol says in episode 8 when Zosia returns and she says to Carol, "Do you want your cousin to come and see you? You haven't seen him since 2005. And Carol says, "Well, it would just be like talking to you, wouldn't it? So there's no point." That's exactly what's going on here. If she played along with their game and was like, "Yeah, okay, bring her here, let me see what she has to say," it's just the Hive speaking through a different meat puppet mask. This is making me lose my mind. In the same scene as well, Zosia does another one of these language manipulation tactics again, where she says, "Once you understand, you'll see how wonderful it is." Talking about how once Carol joins them, she'll get it. You'll be so happy like we are. It only gets better from here. But again, Carol will never see how wonderful it is because she won't exist. The moment she joins, Carol as an individual is gone. The you are does not exist to see the other side of this. And your final moments are full of terror. Look at Kusimayu's facial expressions. You think that she is having a good time going through this physically altering virus joining? No, she is not. And when we line all of this up with everything we've talked about, the narrative control, the emotional push and pull, the reframing of identity, and the way they control what questions and answers are allowed to exist, we can see how the Hive are a planetary scale cult, applying constant pressure to join because they are the ultimate good, the correct way to be alive, how they work on recruiting you against your will anyway. They will use your family, community, and culture as recruitment tools, and they will promise joy and happiness to a version of you that will never exist to feel it. They are a global cult, eating through people's choices and consent, wearing their bodies like costumes, and telling you it's all done in the name of love. But here's the key. One of the most effective ways that people can break out of cults in real life is by asking sharp, specific questions that cut straight through the illusions, which is exactly what Manousos has been doing from the moment he got into the same room with them, forcing them to answer questions that they can't easily manipulate. And that brings me back to where I started in this video. It's not just about what we see, but what we're allowed to see, and who makes those decisions, and what are the gaps that we have to fill in for ourselves. So for me, the finale is circling these different types of divination and special knowing, and how it all comes back to asking the right questions. The magician and psychic posters, the left hand of darkness and its foretellers, Manousos' little radio séance, all these different ways to see beyond the surface, to uncover the truth of what it all means. How magicians, fake psychic charlatans, cult leaders, hive minds in the literal sense, all rely on the same tactics of steering what you think you're asking and deciding what counts as an answer. But real power actually lies with those who refuse to take part in the perception game designed to trap them. Manousos seems to have always been that person, of cutting through their illusions. And now Carol has come full circle too, to see them for what they truly are, and how they must be stopped. And that's where the finale leaves us. Just Carol and Manousos, side by side, ready to ask their own questions, to take back the narrative, to reclaim reality, and hopefully save the world. But anyway, those are just my thoughts and theories after watching the Season 1 finale of Pluribus. But what did you think? After watching this episode, has your perspective on the Hive changed at all? And what are your Season 2 predictions now that Carol and Manousos are seemingly on the same side? Let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, maybe give it a like so we can continue our endless endeavors to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm. And make sure you subscribe if you're not already, so you can see more of whatever videos I end up making in the future. I will say that this is a purely vibes-based channel, so I cannot say for certain what type of future videos I might make, but I can say that they will 100% involve me overthinking things and sharing all of my thoughts and theories. So subscribe if you want to stick around for the vibes, I guess. And if you're already subscribed, you get it. Shout out to you. I see you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in whatever video I end up making next. Goodbye.
Were you two members of the cult?
What cult? Was this a cult? I had no idea this was a cult.